Every time that Specialized release a new product, it feels like the rest of the market has to catch up. I think that's the same situation with these shoes right here, the Specialized S-Works Torch. I've been using these shoes for 1 year and it's about time I gave them a really in-depth review. Let's see why these shoes are so demanding from your bank account. To begin with, let's talk about the fit. I have tried on some of Specialized's previous generation shoes, the S-Works Series 7, the Aries, just to name some of them, and neither of them actually fit my feet. They're far too narrow. So I thought that these new shoes were actually going to be like the old ones until I actually put them on. I found this shoe to actually be a lot wider around here, which is where the styloid process of your foot is. So if you have a wider foot, this is actually more likely to fit you. After actually looking at the geometry of the shoe for a while, I think that Specialized have genuinely designed a shoe that will fit pretty much any foot that goes inside of it. If you find a lot of shoes uncomfortable, then these are definitely worth giving a go. In terms of sizing, I would say they're actually true to size. When I first bought these, I actually put them on for 1 hour and just sat in there on the sofa with them. And I tightened them up as much as I could. And honestly, I literally had no pains, nowhere that was digging in. Of course they felt tight, but it was around the whole foot. So I forgot to mention this in the original filming, but the toe box of the actual shoe itself is nice and roomy. I find it quite amazing that you can have this really snug fit around the whole shoe, but you can still have room to wiggle your toes and it doesn't feel loose around there at all. It does seem that no matter how long I ride for in these shoes, 8, 10, 12 hours, there aren't any specific spots that dig into my feet. And I have a weird shaped foot. Then we get to the insoles. I've been told this far too many times when buying shoes.
These are not designed for feet.
Well, these ones are, and they've put a lot of thought into them. If you actually look closely here, there's actually a bump underneath the foot, which helps separate the metatarsals of the foot itself, really decreasing the chance of any neurological pain that you're going to get going through the foot. You would think it would actually feel lumpy with this lump, but honestly, you actually can't feel it at all. Whilst it seems like it's just foam, it's actually well-designed foam that you can wear for hours and hours on end. As you can tell, I'm really getting along well with these shoes. Next up, let's talk about the boa dials and the heel cup. The boa dials feel, well, like boa dials. They work as you would expect. The lockdown on the foot from here is actually amazing though. They've positioned these boa dials in the perfect place where you really just can't notice that they're there. The way the laces are shaped in combination with the heel cup just kind of mold that one with your feet. You can't really feel the shoe on your foot. It's just a perfect snug fit at all times. Another thing I really like is the lacing system. With this one, instead of the boa popping out and then the laces can be unpulled at once, you have to unturn. But on the other hand, you can unpick it from here and you can then lift the whole tongue out as well. So if you get stuck in a wet ride or something, you can just really easily air your shoes out or access inside of them. Speaking of the laces, the whole system is in a place and a position where you just don't feel them digging in at all over the top. There just seems to be this perfect even compression of your foot over the top of the whole foot when you tighten up. One other thing that I did notice about these shoes is the tongue seems to stay in the same place for me. In most other shoes, the tongue seems to slip outwards, but in this one, it doesn't matter how long I ride in them for, it stays slap bang in the middle. And finally, the last thing on the boa dial section is that these are just so easy to adjust as you're riding along on the fly. If you're coming up before a hill or a sprint, you can quickly tighten them up. And when you're going for a nice long easy bit, you can just quickly loosen them off 1 notch or 2 notches, and that's the perfect amount to loosen them off by. Stiffness. For me, the stiffness of a shoe is so important, and I prefer a stiffer shoe. The stiffer, the better. Before these shoes, I actually used to ride with Bonts, which were crazy stiff. They were like having steel beams underneath your feet. When putting the power through these shoes, they genuinely feel as stiff and as stable as the Bonts. There is a certain sharpness and responsiveness that you find with these shoes that I haven't found with other softer shoes. With that being said, don't let this put you off if you actually like a softer shoe, because these may actually still be for you. When you're just cruising along at like a normal easy speed, you're sitting around in zone 2, these shoes don't actually feel stiff. They don't feel like they're rock solid. And I don't know how they've done this, but they've managed to make a shoe comfortable when you need it to be comfortable and stiff when you need it to be stiff. Heating and cooling. I've never actually had to think about it with this shoe, and that's a massive compliment. I'm not going to say that this shoe is airy. It's not super breathable, like you can't feel the airflow going through the shoe, but it honestly breathes more than well enough that you don't ever think about it. Speaking of airiness though, when I point my shoe downwards or my toe downwards on the bike, I actually can feel some airflow going through, but I don't really have to do this to keep my foot cool. Cleaning is dead easy on this shoe. I've had these for 8,000 kilometers now, and they're still pretty much shiny, shiny white. For the main area of the shoe, all it takes really is just a baby wipe. Doesn't matter what goes on it, a baby wipe seems to rub it all off. There is one area that does not clean on this shoe though, and that is the scuff plate on the front of the shoe here. The baby wipe does not work at all on this bit. If you have any ideas on how to clean this plastic bit on the front, please let me know, because I haven't cleaned it for ages. The base itself as well hasn't held up very well to, let's say, some light rock climbing on these shoes, but it's a shoe, it gets used, and you don't really look at the base anyway. Well, there are certainly a lot of positives to this shoe. They fit you well, they keep your feet cool, they're really stiff and powerful, and they're very comfortable when you need them to be. There are, however, some negatives to this shoe that I should let you know about. The first one is the BOA dials themselves. From a distance, they look nice and shiny and nice and bling, but actually when you touch them and up close, they are kind of plasticky. And on a shoe that's expensive, I don't know, make them out of titanium? Another disadvantage I've noticed to this shoe is actually when you do get yourself caught out in the wet, they actually take quite a long time to dry. I find myself using the hairdryer just to try and speed these shoes up to dry them for the next day. But this doesn't actually happen with sweat. I don't know how it happens with rain, but not with sweat. It's just what happens. And finally, the last negative is that scuff plate. I don't know how to clean it. Like I said, if you've got any ideas, please let me know. But it just doesn't clean with a baby wipe. To give you my final conclusion, are these shoes worth the money? I think hell yeah. They seem to have lasted up to this really long time. They're still white, they're still super comfortable, they're really easy to use, they're fun to sprint in, they're fun to climb in, they're soft and comfortable to cruise in. I really can't have much higher compliments for these shoes. There's just those few little nitpicky bits I mentioned a little bit earlier. Wow, that's a lot to talk about. So if you're still here, thank you. I hope I've done my best to give you a nice comprehensive review of this shoe. If you have any other questions that you think need answering, please just feel free to ask me here, or you can actually ask me privately on Instagram as well. I'll do my best to answer them for you. If this video was helpful, then please give it a like for me. I'm Jason, this has been Cycling Unboxed. I'll catch you in the next video.